2 months ago, I made a PC with the help of my friends, obviously, and it it did cost me quite a bit of money. And this is before the RAM AI server incident where the RAM just doubled in price. But the place that I got it from, all of the prices were already upscaled anyway, so it came about the same amount as you're seeing right here anyway. So of course, with a PC like this, one can only get curious as to what kind of performance it gives, or it provides, I should say. So 2 months later, after having, the PC tried out on a few things, on a few games, a few editing softwares, different types of videos and whatnot, and also entering the new year 2026. It's currently 3rd of January, and I also recorded some of the stuff on the 2nd and the 1st of January. I thought, let's start the year off with a benchmark, to compare to later on in life if I do upgrade. Now, I'm not a PC expert by any means. I'm not Linus Tech Tips or even Lectron. I'm just a guy who uploads here and there on YouTube, plays a couple games on my PC with a few friends, and curious to see what kind of performance my PC gives. So I've gathered a couple games over here to test, including some benchmarks. As you can see, we've got 3D Mark and the Cinebench benchmark, which are quite commonly used and widely accepted. But the idea is I wanted to try different types of games, AAA games, competitive FPS games, also just not a competitive game, CPU intensive games, and just see the different kind of numbers that the PC will give me. Now, this voiceover is being recorded after everything has been done, and so I only use the NVIDIA built-in overlay for the stats checker. But later on, I do switch on the new Steam overlay after I've done some research on frame generation and whatnot. But we'll get to that a bit later. So we'll go on each game one at a time and using the benchmarks, compare it to other systems and builds. But don't expect anything crazy. No super detailed Lectron video. Now, starting off with Rocket League, it did something very interesting that was brought to my attention. And that's that the game wouldn't perform that well. As you can see, I'm only getting about 50, maybe 60 frames per second at ultra quality. By the way, all of these tests are on ultra settings, the highest graphics, whatever the max the game is able to provide, as a means of calibrating it to a standard for fair testing, obviously. So I never lowered the resolution or anything like that to any game to try and get a higher FPS. This is just max equals numbers, makes my monkey brain go, do you know what I mean? Anyway, as I was saying, one thing I did toggle back and forth was frame generation whenever the game had it available, or the display window. So whether it was on full screen, windowed, or windowed borderless. And in this case, Rocket League, a game that was giving me 50-60 frames per second at max quality, when toggled on full screen, you'll see that the quality jumps by 10 to 12 fold, giving me 6, 7, maybe even 8. Hey, calm down. 700-800 frames per second at full quality. I also had my brother test these games out, specifically just Rocket League and Fortnite, since they were his games, the ones that he plays. So this is his gameplay. You can see he gets a phenomenal comeback on a game that he was losing because he wasn't set up properly on my desktop. But yeah, overall, I'm really happy with Rocket League, to be fair. I was, pleasantly surprised. Now, I'm not sure what the actual standard is. I don't know what normally people would get at these settings. But again, this video is just specific to me and my PC, so this is my numbers. I will do some comparisons later on, but for now, we're just going through what it's providing me. Anyways, moving on to Fortnite, you're going to see I also have it at max settings. I always make sure to show it before I do anything. Turned off the FPS and the latency markers because they were kind of just overlapping with my NVIDIA ones. Now, Fortnite is said to be a CPU intensive game, so you will see that the FPS does drop quite a bit to around 100, maybe 90 frames per second here and there, which later on, interesting enough, after doing some research, turns out that my CPU was underperforming. And I mean, you can kind of see that with the CPU dropping to 60 sometimes, maybe even 40, and then back up to 80. Very inconsistent, very up and down. So I did go into the BIOS to do something to fix that, which I will talk about later. But yeah, otherwise the game was running smoothly, no real stutters, no sluggy movements. The response was fine, editing was fine, as you can see, and all while looking really nice. The details, the textures, the graphics, and overall. Obviously, like I said, my brother was playing Fortnite and Rocket League, so you get to see him just completely destroy this lobby. I had him do different things, obviously, like building, shooting, even driving vehicles in this game to see, if anything in the game could cause any problems or anything like that. But yeah, overall, very consistent stuff. I'm pretty happy with it. The numbers could be higher FPS wise, but like I said, I did look into that and figure out something, which I'll be keeping a secret for now. Anyways, following the competitive scene, I played a game that I never played before. Counter-Strike 2. I only used it because I don't have any FPS games on my PC right now. No Black Ops 6, no Black Ops. Like, I do have Black Ops 2 and 3, but I'm not going to be testing that, let's be honest here. So yeah, I hopped on Counter-Strike 2, loaded up a practice match because, again, like I said, I never played the game before. And I mean, I didn't use the Nvidia one here because Counter-Strike is a bit of a struggle to record on OBS without it flickering and stuttering between scenes. So the only way to do it is to add a third party, be in OBS, recording it as a game capture, and then that doesn't show the actual Nvidia overlay. So I use the in-game overlay. And as you can see, I mean, do we really have a complaint here? We're averaging like 280, pushing 300, in some cases even above 300, with no real stutters, no screen tearing, nothing, no issues whatsoever. Obviously dominated, because that's just how I do it. But yeah, it was, you know, CS, no real problem. Now, moving on to the AAA lineup, starting off with the most standard test of all time, Cyberpunk 2077. Now, Cyberpunk is a bit of an interesting one because you've got a lot of settings to tweak. You've got stuff like path tracing and ray tracing. And like I said, I'm going to put everything on ultra max settings. So ray tracing and path tracing is always on. I'm never going to reduce that if it's available to me. And as I mentioned before, the one thing I did tweak back and forth is the display mode as well as the frame generation. Now, Cyberpunk is the first game that you're going to see here that has frame generation, I think. Anyway, AAA game, frame generation. I tried it without frame generation first, and with the recording of OBS, you know, taking up some resources, 69 average, pretty nice. Maybe even pushing it above 75, which is pretty standard from what you expect from a build like mine. And then when I'm not recording, it actually goes up a little bit, giving me 80. I'll show you a screenshot of when I did it without the recording as well. And then obviously whenever you do turn on frame generation, it goes up a bit higher than that, pushing a whopping 250 average, I think it was, which on paper is incredible. But you need to understand the intricacies of frame generation and how it works. Now, I will leave a link to a video that I watched that explained everything to me, but a quick rundown. You're essentially sacrificing, on average, about 25% of your base frames for an increase of about maybe 2/3 of overall frames, and then also increasing latency by maybe 10 milliseconds and 20, depending on the game and how much you're using frame generation. So like, because there's 2 times, 4 times, and even I think 8 times in some cases, depending on which card you've got. So you probably wouldn't want to use frame generation on a competitive game where you need as least amount of latency as possible. But for single player games, it doesn't feel too bad as long as it's not above maybe like 40. But that is how frame generation on a nutshell works. And another game that has it is The Witcher 3, another game by Red. And interestingly enough, The Witcher 3 doesn't have a multiplication factor, I should say, for the frame generation. You just either switch it on or off. And I'm guessing that means that it's a base of 2, because the frames jump from an average of 80, maybe 90, sometimes 75, as you can see from the gameplay, to about 130 average, I think. You know, we get 123 consistently, we get 140 consistently, but the number that I see the most is about 130, you know, having Geralt run around and whatnot. Also, I just started playing this game recently, trying to catch up because Witcher 4 looked incredible. But yeah, in different settings, riding on the horse, raining, daylight, whichever environment I'm in, the frame rate is pretty consistent, pushing maybe even 100 on the non-frame generated gameplay. And then moving on to one of the most recent AAA games, a game that I've been playing on my channel for quite a while now, Silent Hill F. Now, Silent Hill F is one of the more interesting cases here, and one that really brings out that CPU issue that I was mentioning earlier. So when I first recorded the gameplay using the Nvidia overlay, you can see I'm averaging maybe about 80, 75 frames. Sometimes it'll go up to 100 depending on the area if there's less assets, but you'll see a consistent 70-ish frames per second, right? And I thought, okay, makes sense. Latest AAA game, very beautiful, a lot to render, very advanced 3D effects and whatever the reason may be, right? You know, even in buildings, I'd still get like 64, 60 frames per second, pushing 90 maybe. Again, the standard deviation was quite big, about 30 frames big maybe. And so I just left it as that. And then I went and did the 3D mark test, the one that everyone usually does. TimeSpy, which essentially tests your GPU, CPU, RAM all individually and then all together, giving you an overall score and then comparing it to other builds. And so I went ahead, ran this, very curious about the score that I would get. And I've come out with a score, an overall score of 19.5 thousand. Now, I didn't know how good that was until I saw the average being I think it was 8,000, which is interesting because I didn't think that, you know, my PC would perform too crazy, but I was expecting a little bit better. So I did some research. This is where I found out that my CPU was actually limited or underperforming essentially. So I had gone on to the BIOS and did what's called a precision boost. I think it was PBO, I think is the acronym, under the CPU advanced settings and the AMD overclock, bringing it up to level 1. There's multiple levels, but apparently the safest is level 1. Anything higher, you're kind of risking stuff. So I didn't want to, you know, I kept it at level 1. Nothing crazy. And just that boost alone brought this 19.5 thousand score with an average, with a score for the graphics 20.4 thousand and a CPU score 15.39 thousand to 21.2 thousand. So bringing it up by 3,000 points and above the average. The graphics also went up by 2,700, I think. CPU score didn't go up as much, which is interesting because that's what I boosted. But otherwise, I'm above average, so now I'm a bit happier. And obviously comparing it to other systems, it seems that my system has a 89% better score than all other systems. So still confused about the CPU, I went ahead and opened up Cinebench and did a multi-core render test on there. Initially, before the CPU boost, I had gotten a score of I think 31,000, which put me on the expected level for my CPU. I think it was at top 33. And then post CPU overclock boost, whatever you want to call it, it jumped up from 33 to number 28 on the leaderboard. Because after doing the test again, I don't know if you can hear my cat meowing outside my door, but after doing the test again, the score jumped up from 31,000 to 34,000, I think it was, which is a big number. It's a big jump. Hold it right there. Editing, you're hopping in real quick. Upon further research, I came across the userbenchmark website, which allowed me to then download their app to just add another layer of testing, you know? Really dig into my PC and find out what's going on. I've got it on window mode right now because if I put it on full screen mode, just like CS, it will just start flickering everywhere on OBS. So anyway, and the way that user benchmark works is just like 3D Mark. It starts rendering like a scene, a couple scenes, a couple tests to test out the different components of your PC separately and together, which then gives you an overall score to compare to other users. However, the difference is that you can actually do a pre-bench launch. So if I press here, it will give me the condition that my PC is at right now, and as you can see it says high load. The reason why it's doing all this is because I'm doing the user benchmark and recording at the same time, which is why it's saying that I have a high load. And what's good about this app is that it actually tells you how to fix it. So it just says like close or minimize. So right now if I minimize OBS and try again, it actually makes it better. It says 33% accessible. That's because I'm still recording. When I did this without OBS, this was up at 75 and 85 consistently. It even fixed my mouse at one point, right? Once you do this pre-bench, then you go to benchmarks and have it launch a benchmark, which if you don't have the paid version, you're gonna have to wait on a queue. But if you do have the paid version, you can just go into the server with priority, I guess, right? As you can see, I have to join the queue. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because when I did do this test initially, I noticed that my RAM was actually limited. And if you go back into the video towards the start where I have Task Manager opened up while I'm explaining the point of the video, you're going to notice, yes, it is actually limited to 4,800 when I have 6,000 available. So I went back into the BIOS and I enabled XMP essentially. And if we go to the results from earlier that I had, you're going to notice that before I fixed my RAM and also boosted my CPU, it was actually performing below expectation. And the graphics card was performing above expectation, but below potential. And same goes for the other components. But then once I had boosted the CPU, boosted the RAM, you're gonna see that now I've got performing way above expectation on the 97th percentile for my CPU, but my GPU hasn't changed. So this is probably still another issue that I need to find out, but everything else has also gone as expected or above expectation. So that BIOS boost really helped. And it does also leave an impression, which you will see here on Silent Hill F. Now, before Silent Hill F was running around 60, 80, maybe pushing 100 in very specific moments, but the average was around 70 frames per second. With this boost, it's gone and almost doubled, pushing 166 at the highest and 114 at the lowest, with an average about 130, 125, somewhere around there, which is insane. And if I was to find out what's wrong with my GPU and why it's performing below potential, then we could probably see these numbers go up even higher. So I'll have to go figure that out on my own. Cyberpunk and The Witcher 3, their tests haven't really changed too much. The only difference between them is whenever I am recording or I'm not recording. I also went ahead and tested Cyberpunk without ray tracing, which gave me a really good result, to be honest with you. And only afterwards realized that Fortnite actually has ray tracing as well. So I went ahead and turned that on and tested it out as well. Got really good numbers, about the same numbers that I was getting before ray tracing, which is really interesting. And I'm guessing that's because of the boost as well. Also, this is what my build looks like on MSI Afterburner. Now, I don't really understand MSI Afterburner all that well, so I'm not sure if the CPU and the GPU is supposed to be maxed out like this or not. I haven't clocked anything or overclocked anything, I should say. And if I just quickly show you guys my fan curve and how that's performing on the inside of my PC, what's going on there, everything also seems to be going well, right? And then last but not least, going back to Task Manager, you're going to notice that now my memory is in fact at 6000 megahertz, which is where it's supposed to be. GPU and then CPU. Now, if there's any experts out there watching this, enthusiasts, Linus, Electron, whichever one of you, anyone out there, and you've noticed something that's actually kind of off about my PC and you'd like to give some advice, go for it. Leave it in the comment down below, or you have every freedom to also make a reaction video on it and give me advice that way as well. Because I do feel from the depths of my gut that my PC is still yet underperforming and has yet to reach its full potential. But anyways, it's been fun just kind of dissecting my PC like this and understanding how it works, because it also gives you insight and an overview on the bigger picture of things, and whenever something's changed you have a better understanding as to why and how and all of that stuff. And if you do want to see me make more like this, give me a suggestion and I'll give it a go. Otherwise, I'm gonna head off and you guys take care.